Welcome to another episode of Mission Compliance, Unleashing Growth Potential for Defense Contractors. In today's episode, we continue down the road of understanding CMMC, its regulations, and controls. Up next is AT L2-3.2.2. Ensure that organizational personnel are adequately trained to carry out their assigned information security-related duties and responsibilities. We'll break down what this control means, why it matters, and how it impacts your organization's cybersecurity posture. We'll also provide practical insights and strategies for achieving compliance and securing your systems effectively. So whether you're a defense contractor aiming to win more contracts or simply someone interested in bolstering your cybersecurity knowledge, you're in the right place. Grease is the word. We're joined once again today by Mike Frieder, President of On-Call Compliance Solutions and a CMMC Professional Assessor. Thanks for joining us, Mike.
Hey, always a pleasure, Roman. Good to see you.
So, Mike, on the last control, we talked about the importance of managers and system administrators being made aware of security risk associated with their activities. This week, we're talking about ensuring that all employees receive proper training to carry out their information security related duties. With that being said, why is it important to have all your personnel adequately trained to carry out their assigned duties?
Yeah, this is a phenomenal control because it's training. You can only put in so many technical safeguards before human error enters the picture. And it is human error that has led to the greatest attacks and hacks of all time. And so it is critical that you train your people so much so that they made this into a control. So 3.2.2, ensure the organizational personnel are adequately trained to carry out their assigned information security related duties and responsibilities. So I think, 3.2.2 might be the most important control in all of NIST SP 800-171 because at the end of the day, you can't just secure a system with technical controls. Otherwise, security will fail because there are humans involved in the operation of the system. And human error is ultimately what has led to virtually all of the largest hacks of all time. Certainly in the defense industry, those attacks that have been successful have primarily been because of human error, phishing attacks, humans leaving VPNs up and things like that. I won't really get deeply into the precise methods that have been used. But the point is that training is a big deal. Anyone who ever gets access to a system containing CUI needs to understand that they're not just on your average system, that the system that they're in is a system that contains ultra-sensitive information that's defense in nature and vital national security. And if they don't understand that, well, that's pretty problematic. So much so that they've made this entire control about it. So I will also share with our audience here that when we help people to implement these controls, we have found that training is one of the more difficult to implement. Not impossible, but of all the controls that we see people implementing, which did not exist and typically do not exist, for some reason, it seems that getting everybody on the same page is challenging. The government does put out some training for this. We run in our virtual compliance officer program. We've actually really greatly simplified this by making some I'll call it entertaining style training videos that can be dropped into a learning management system. And we've just sort of found some ways to make training stick and also be much easier to distribute. So I think that might be kind of a warning to those people in our audience who are trying to implement this. Be aware that you need to kind of start early on training and you need to train early and often. Interestingly, when I look at very large companies or those companies who are very security focused for one reason or another, those companies, training is heavily emphasized. Training is done on, let's say a periodic basis. There's continuous daily training, and then they're often testing that training, with sort of, I'll call them fire drills. So great examples are companies that are experienced will run phishing campaigns to simulate being attacked. I think one of the things people sort of don't really have top of mind, which is sad that they would have to have it top of mind, is that when you're in the defense industry, your day kind of goes like this. You wake up, you go to work, and as soon as you get to work, you have to keep in mind a level of vigilance because everybody in the world is trying to attack you. You've got foreign nation states that have bounties on defense contractor heads. There are hacking groups out there that would love to exploit a defense contractor. It's I'd love to say it's wake up, come to work, do your job, but it's wake up, come to work, be vigilant about being attacked and defrauded. Oh yeah, and you got to do a job in there too. And that's I think that's kind of really where the training comes in to really bring about that awareness that is not intuitive. There's nothing intuitive about defending yourself from a phishing attack. You simply need to be trained on it. You need to experience what those things are like and make sure to click the right buttons. So yeah, that's a kind of a good summary there because again, it's a very, very critical control, and I think training is something that is perhaps maybe the most important thing going on.
Absolutely. So, what are the key assessment points on this one?
Yeah, great question. So there are three key assessment points. The first one is determine if information security related duties, roles, and responsibilities are defined. And so again, if I am, let's say, a floor worker in a manufacturing operation, what is my information security related duties? What am I required to do to keep this company safe? And if you are a company that does not have that defined, then you can expect failure. Where should it be defined? We like the IT use and cybersecurity policy. That's a great place to have these kinds of things defined. And I feel that the IT use and cybersecurity policy is a perfect place where you can really do that defining and making sure that they have a good understanding of what their responsibilities are. Definitely going to be the answer on that one. Again, the organization can also define those duties within a job description. So that's another place that you could potentially describe that. So those are two places, two good answers that I'll kind of give our audience. Assessment point number two, determine if information security related duties, roles, and responsibilities are assigned to designated personnel. The organization assigns information security related duties, roles, and responsibilities via job roles and descriptions. So the way that we look at it, typically, and again, this may not be your answer, but typically you will get a set of paperwork and standard operating procedures handed to you along with your job description and your job role. So if your role is a machine operator, you're probably not going to have a lot of information, security related job duties. If you're the CEO, well, then you've got to have a pretty big laundry list of information security related duties because you've got a lot going on in your role. You've got access to a lot of systems, and there are definitely some very specific ways that you need to have to be carrying out your duties so that you don't accidentally break information security. Very easy to do. So again, making that role based and defining that, I think, are critical. Number three, determine if personnel are adequately trained to carry out their assigned information security related duties, roles, and responsibilities. And again, this really just boils down to what they call an organizationally defined parameter. What is it that the organization deems is enough training? And is that documented? For instance, is it enough to do training once a year? Or is it enough to do training once a year plus random phishing attacks throughout the year? What is enough? And I think that should be defined by the organization in its root level standard operating procedures. And again, we always keep in mind that we have to have great documentation, great policies. That's what's going to make an assessor happy. That's what's going to prove to an assessor that you've actually got a mechanism or a standard operating procedure matched with a person that they interview that says, yes, I've seen this policy before, and yes, it's effective. Yeah, those are the assessment points. Again, this one pretty crystal clear and easy control, very important control, and it's just critical to get the training part right and not just leave that by the wayside. Because believe me, you will have employees that click on the wrong thing, and when you do, they will click on the wrong thing, and they won't just cost the company a couple of dollars; they'll cost the company big money, whether it's being defrauded out of a large amount of money. For goods and services that were not legitimately purchased, or could be they've been hacked and attacked, and we've got a big nasty cleanup mess just because somebody gave some random person a password or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. You said quick and easy control. With that being said, are there any potential difficulties in enacting this one in an organization?
I tend to think a couple of things. One is there is in smaller businesses this lack of coordination on training, I guess you would say. Small businesses act like small people, and they don't really quite have enough manpower to say you're the designated person in charge of training sometimes. I would really try to do that. I would try to have a person in the company who's responsible for training, an HR person. Um, and I think that's really important. I think that's a critical piece of the puzzle. The next one is um, delays. I've seen silly delays in large companies over training. We've done the math on this, and it takes between 1.5 hours and 2 hours per year to train on core information security training, along with an occasional supplemental training throughout the year, maybe one, two, or three throughout the year that are just additional and unique topics. It doesn't take much. And I think particularly in larger companies, they start getting concerned with the idea of training exhaustion. So another thing that we see them being very cautious about is the idea of just piling on too much training for their employees, leaving not enough time to do their job. I think that's I think that's just simply not a really relevant or valid point. The total aggregate amount of training time for this is about 1.5 to 2 hours per year. That is basically what is required of the employee to be properly trained. So I think, at the end of the day, um, those excuses or reasons why they are delaying the training are silly reasons. And if there's a problem rolling it out, we may be able to help with that. Just contact on call. Um, so yeah, it's delays. It's also coordination with HR. So IT doesn't typically have a very in-depth relationship with HR. They tend to handle terminations and they handle new client onboarding. But training is not usually something that the IT folks really coordinate a lot with in HR. And we can take this kind of as an opportunity to improve the way that our companies operate and just get one more layer deep with HR and getting people trained on information security. So I think that's a good idea.
Absolutely. And if you are a frequent listener or watcher of this podcast, you know what comes next. We handle our three questions. And then because these controls can be a little bit dry, because they can be a little bit humdrum and a little bit technical, we like to get a little bit silly. And sometimes Mike's answer to the silly question ends up being incredibly valuable. He said last week he thinks they are invented just to troll him, and maybe they are a little bit, but the best silly questions can lead to serious and useful answers. So with that being said, Mike, this control is about training employees on security related duties. And so how would you explain the importance of that training and security related duties and cybersecurity to someone who thinks the internet is just a series of tubes?
I think it's a great question. I was thinking about the first half of your question. It sounded pretty serious. Um, I get it, right? I think all companies have people who are technology averse. They just don't get it, don't want to get it. Those people are beginning very quickly to thin out of our workforce. I think over the last 10 years, it's gotten so much better. Most people come in and they are pretty solid users of computers. Most people have experienced a phishing attack and things like that. But we've still got those users who are just highly resistant. The first thing that I would do personally, if it was my employee, which is a very jaded question because we do kind of own a global technology company, right? So that's the kind of company we have. So if we got someone who was not computer savvy, they'd probably have to go. But look, we run sales teams, we run service teams, and not everybody has to be super computer savvy to work here. The first thing is, if you're detecting that somebody's struggling in the training, you've got to figure out, is this person worth continuing to employ, or are they so far out with the dinosaurs that it's faster and easier to just replace them? And that's a week one kind of question. If they've made it through your interview process and they've gotten hired and they've gone through everything, and then they just don't turn out to be who you thought they would be, um, hey man, run a tight ship, get rid of the excess baggage. That's all I can say. But I think there are definitely more people who look at training and they go, this training's a waste of my time. It's not really for me. It's a cultural issue. And I think that is valuable advice, especially if you're higher up, if you're a director of IT, you need to go to your CEOs. You need to go to your whole executive team, whoever's relevant. You need to say, look, I've got this thing that's really important. Because if it's not important, what's going to happen is somebody on your team is going to screw it up, create a whole bunch of extra work for me, and going to get the company as a whole into a lot of hot water. The first thing that happens when you get a major cyber attack is you got to go buy cyber insurance for everybody. It's a mess and expensive. It hits them in the pocketbook. So maybe you have to lead with that. But the first thing you got to do is you got to get executive buy-in. And, again, if you've got an employee on staff and they're just not getting with it, you've really got to question whether that's an asset or liability for your company, right? Because if they're not getting this, they're probably also not getting other things.
That's a good answer to what turned out to be a silly question. And when I first kind of came up with this question, I imagined that episode of The Office where they talk about Michael Scott wanting to install a series of tubes in the office and put hamsters in them. So I just imagine if it was like internet hamsters. I don't internet hamsters. Who came up with that? It was me. Anyway, on that note, before this falls further down the rabbit hole, that wraps up another great episode of Mission Compliance. We hope our discussion today has provided you with valuable insights, practical strategies, and inspiration to navigate the ever evolving world of defense. We'd like to thank Mike for joining us and talking about this very important topic on security related duties. Thanks, Mike.
Hey, always a pleasure. I love doing it.
But the conversation doesn't end here. We encourage you to continue exploring these topics and connect with us via our social media channels. Share your thoughts, ask questions, and engage with fellow listeners using the hashtag Mission Compliance Podcast. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so you always know when new episodes like this one are released. And we'd really appreciate it if you could take a moment to rate and review the show. Your feedback helps us to continue to bring you thought provoking episodes and high quality content. Join us next time as we delve further into the dynamic world of defense, security, and industry innovation. Until then, take care, stay informed, and make compliance your mission. See you next time.
Thanks, everybody.